First up is Paris in the Spring by Alexis Taylor.
Let me pay the call. All the other things.
And this was Karl's pick. So Karl, you go first.
Yeah, so I mean, easy pick for me this month. This one, I think, well documented on this channel. I think that Hot Chip, one of my favorite bands. We obviously covered Joe Goddard's project last summer, so it seemed only right to, give Alexis's latest solo project the same treatment. And yeah, he's one of them where his solo projects have always been quite interesting listens, I find. Piano in 2016 was kind of exactly what it says on the tin. It was just him and a piano. And then Beautiful Thing in 2018 was maybe a bit more like his day job, a bit more like Hot Chip. But then after that we got Silence, which was this like really dramatic, like classical music influenced solo project. So he's one of those where you never know really what you're going to get. And I think with this one, it's just another really, really lovely, worthwhile project. It starts off, Your Only Life is just like this really sweet start. Just, quite simple arrangement and a welcome reminder to not dwell on, the bad things in life, but instead focus on what matters most. Just like a really sweet sentiment to like kick the whole project off. It then goes into I Can Feel Your Love, which has just got this really great groove to it. That's one that could easily be a Hot Chip song. I mean, they have a lot of songs with love in the title anyway. And when I was listening to it, I was like, this is definitely one that he probably wrote for Hot Chip and that he's stolen for himself. But yeah, and then after that, we have one of the only singles that I heard ahead of time, which is Out of Phase with Lola Kirk, who's like an actress, singer-songwriter. And yeah, I just absolutely adore that song. Has this almost like a sci-fi fantasy, like cinematic nature to it. It reminded me a bit of like Magdalena Bay, bit of like Everything But the Girl. Just this really dreamy arrangement, and like their vocal harmonies on that song just really complement one another. So yeah, easily one of the highlights on the album, and indeed probably the year in terms of songs, I think, for me, that one. And then and then after that we kind of get a bit of a left turn. He gives us his own version of the Rolling Stones classic Wild Horses, and like he's done, if you're familiar with Hot Chip, but like he's done with Bruce Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark, and I think he did a rendition of Prince's Purple Rain in the past as well. He just, with this one, he just makes it completely his own. It's like a really cool, like synth-driven version, to the point where if you weren't familiar with the Rolling Stones one, you'd probably think it was just one of his songs, which again, I think is just a great testament to him and what a great musician he is. And then from there, I would say that first opening 4-track run is really strong. Columbia for me is then a bit of a slight lull in the pace of the album. It kind of slows everything down to like a real plod. And yeah, Alexis delivers like these quite fuzzy, like lo-fi vocals on that song, and it's one of those. It's not necessarily a bad track, but it definitely, for me, it kind of killed the momentum slightly, and it's definitely not my favorite one on the track list here. But it does bring it back. For a Toy is like this delicate piano ballad where he's sort of singing about self-sabotage, and at first you think it's from his own perspective, and then as it goes through the song, it switches and you show that he's like maybe talking about humanity and how we treat the world as a whole, which I think is very clever. And I think that's a good point. Like in general, I think lyrically he's feeling like pretty reflective on this album, like looking back on like life and love. And yeah, the track after that, On a Whim, is another good example on those kind of like lyrical themes. and it's got some really funky Nile Rodgers and Chic style guitars going on. Again, just like a um, different element in the sonic mix on this record. And then yeah, from there we get the brilliantly titled "Fainting by Numbers," which yeah, he sings. I've got the line here. I've been fainting by numbers, trying to beat the time on my hands. So again, yeah, just continuing the theme of like trying to escape out of like the darkness, and it's another nice song, but maybe if I'm being a bit uh critical, I'd say it's another nice song, but maybe retreads some of the same like ground of the other tracks on the album. Um, but yeah, and then he gives us like the last couple of songs. MP3s can make you cry, um, which is something completely different. It's got some cool like Daft Punk vocoder vocals, which they sort of come in and collide with like this folkier instrumentation, which again, if you dig into the lyrics, he's talking about the state of the music industry and how it's all digitally focused now, and whether that's aiming for streaming statistics or using AI. Um, Alexis kind of making the point that like the power of songwriting and real like songwriting just remains undefeated. So yeah, just really great song and message right in the back end. And then I think he amplifies that message by ending the album on one of the best moments on the whole project, which is Black Lodge in the Sky, which again is just like this very pensive, very pensive lyrically, but like a beautiful arrangement and melody. Again, he's got like these distorted vocals going on and these sweet, like floaty synths that come through, and it almost ties it back to the start. And it's got this great moment where it kind of fades to black and then it reemerges again right at the end, kind of showing that like transcendence that he's talking about on that track. So yeah, just overall, just really love this project. Obviously, he made it for springtime, and I think lyrically and sonically, it's really like fit the mood of the month. That's just been, quite dark, especially if you think about what's going on in the world. He definitely touches on, the darker elements of life in 2026, but always with like that glimmer of hope, I would say. So yeah, I would say it's probably my favorite of his solo albums to date. I think overall, from start to finish, it's just a really great project. So yeah, really enjoyed this one.
There we go. So, Phil, how was Paris in the Spring for you? No, just the album. This is.
Yeah, I didn't go. Yeah, no, it's a new one to me. This album, and actually Alexis's like solo work was as well. So I didn't twig at first that it was Hot Chip until I started listening. I was like, that's really familiar voice, and the production style on the vocals as well. At first, I thought I wasn't quite sure if I liked it at first, but once it got going and kind of grew on me, and then with the other elements kind of coming in, the synths and the kind of layering, which kind of builds in the first track, it kind of all clicked into place, and I realized like who it was and kind of the context of it all. So yeah, I think the first track, it built on me quite quickly. I got quite enthusiastic about the project. It's kind of relatively simple and subtle, not really overdoing things, and that kind of got me interested probably more than I thought I would at that point. And yeah, it kind of, I think as Karl said, that first half of the album really gets very interesting. It's quite gentle, I guess, with the spring, the springtime theme, but also intriguing and quite deep. The ideas that are being explored, musically very creative. That cover of Wild Horses, yeah, it was hardly recognizable as the original song, which I think it's a good thing. It's nice. I like it when artists, cover something in that way and make it completely their own version and kind of almost recreate it. But obviously, still keeping the kind of core there. And it's kind of like it was synth heavy. There's almost like a reggae rhythm to it at some point, and then like a lap steel or pedal steel guitar, I think, as well, which is kind of crazy if you think of all that out together, but it works, which is quite impressive. So yeah, and kind of as it went on, more of that sort of theme, fairly gentle on the surface, but lyrically quite honest and quite deep, and obviously very sort of deeply thought out as well. When he's been writing these songs, I think it kind of didn't quite sustain. I felt similar to what Karl was saying. I was hoping it would keep going up and maintaining that kind of strength and intrigue. I found like in For a Toy, for example, it was musically really interesting, and the themes were fascinating. But I did feel like that kind of direct style of writing, almost more like a prose style, did feel a bit clunky by that point in places. I kind of noticed, where things were not quite flowing poetically. So I suppose from there, that the first part was great. A bit of a weakness in the middle. It got to a bit of a background near the end. I started losing focus on it a little bit when I was listening. I think Black Lodge in the Sky, though, was a bit of an exception. In that latter part, that really did kind of come through and stand out again as a really great song. So I suppose in overall, it was definitely like I saw skill there and creativity and made like some kind of amazing musical mind, and kind of not what I would have expected if someone had said it was the guy from Hot Chip, so writing an album like this. It's kind of went in directions I wouldn't have thought it would. But perhaps I wouldn't. It probably wouldn't be an album I'd have on repeat. It was a great listen, and maybe I'd listen to like one or two of the tracks again and put them on playlists. In fact, though, I have done that, which is, you'll be glad to know, Karl. But it wouldn't be like the album as a whole probably didn't make it into like my top list. But it was great to be introduced to it.
Yeah, so it's a broadly enjoyable springtime visit to Paris there. So yeah, I mean, there's a couple of surprises. The fact that it's the lead singer of Hot Chip you mentioned there, and then obviously Wild Horses as well, that's the cover. So when you were saying about that, I was sort of, it could be quite nice when you're listening to something and then you realize it's a certain singer, but like Daniel Avery's album we covered last year, it just had featuring Ellie in one of the songs, and it became very clear early on that was Ellie Rousel of Wolf Alice, which was one of the best cameos of 2025 for sure. But yeah, like you say, Karl, we covered Joe Goddard a couple of years ago, so yeah, it feels right that we cover an Alexis Taylor album as well, and bring the two sort of main faces of Hot Chip together. Maybe there will be a Hot Chip album we review at some point in future. Let's see. But yeah, I think both of you have covered really the sort of main points here. Quite stripped back at times, quite direct. I think the note I have generally is it's sad songs to luxuriating. That was kind of my feel from this. Yeah, I mean, I've got a different view with For a Toy from yourself, Phil. I mean, that one was one of the singles, so I was quite familiar with the singles, and that was the one where I suddenly got very interested for this album. And it's got a kind of Christmassy feel to it as well. I feel like that could be released as a single maybe around that sort of time, but it's got that quite majestic feel around it, and for me nothing sort of meets that song in terms of that level, but I would say that the level is very, very high throughout, and it's only when we get to Fainting by Numbers where I felt that was a bit of a drop off from what had preceded it, and yeah, unlike the two of you, Black Lodge in the Sky, I like it, but maybe not as much as what you sort of mentioned. But I'd say, but aside from those two, the others I feel are all very solidly very good songs, all very interesting, all very subtle but deep, as you both sort of alluded to as well. The lyrical level. I think some of the references you make, Carl, I hadn't quite appreciated. I saw most of this as a relationship album and not acting as a metaphor for any commentary on life. Even though I was a little bit confused by the MP3s can make you cry song title, but I just had here divorce proceedings touched upon, and stream of consciousness, pain of a breakup. Nice quirky arrangement. So yeah, this is a really worthwhile, as you say, in endeavor. Really great to get a solo album and his artistic vision, which I think he really, for the most part, pulls off really impressively. And yeah, it just makes me sort of realize, I mean, Hot Chip's discography is deep and varied enough for a real dive into, but Alexis's sort of previous efforts and upcoming would be ones I would make the effort to really seek out, because probably more my bag than Joe Goddard. I don't know if you'd be the other way around, Carl, but
for me they're quite different. They're quite different. I think Joe Goddard's very much like
more dance floor, is it?
Yeah, party, party
hedonistic. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's probably, that's a nice balance that you got the hedonistic and the kind of introverted, making Hot Chip what they are. But yeah, I'm probably more on the introverted side in terms of the.
If this is the album for spring, Joe Goddard's like the album for summer.
yeah, the festival bangers. So there we go. That's our first one to kick us off, and good sort of conclusions, I think, by us all, with a few notes and areas where it maybe could have been stronger.